Hello, is it? Colleagues and afternoon guests. We shall begin the next event in a little bit of time. We're expecting, and this, like you all know, since today is African Day, we've been trying to showcase the work we do in Africa. And our two events or our three events so far have tried to project what are the issues of climate change in the continent. We've moved from energy. Our first event today was on climate energy, on climate, the nexus between climate adaptation, energy, and decentralized, and the use of renewable energy to drive the end of poverty in Africa. And two other events have all been about adaptation. And I think one of the important things we're bringing into this next event will be on also trying to touch on vulnerability. I would like to welcome the Right Honorable Speaker. Thanks. So thanks, Right Honorable Speaker. And your introduction, thanks, CEO WF China Winnie Lu, and our guests from the U.S. Treasury. So we really appreciate you joining this site event. And I was just, before you came in, trying to kill for time. I was saying today we are celebrating our African Day in WWF. And what we're trying to do is to showcase the work we do in Africa as a conservation organization. And we've had a couple of events so far. The first one was looking at renewable energy in Africa. We've looked at adaptation, the two last events on adaptation. And this one, which I think brings to full cycle the whole idea or the whole idea around climate change and the impacts. We bring in another aspect of vulnerability, that one group that is vulnerable, which is the women. And I think when we look at the title, Bridging the Finance Gap for Transformative Gender, Climate Solutions, Finding Sustainable Finance Market in Transition to a Green Resilient Future, I think here we're trying to also trying to give a human face to the impact of climate change. And so I really appreciate that. I'll be moderating this session. On behalf of WWF Zambia and sitting in for Ms. Rose Zibizi, who at the last minute could not make it. So I would like us to start this event by, I would like to welcome our CEO, WWF China CEO, Ms. Winnie Lu. Ms. Winnie Lu, like I said, is the CEO of WWF China. You know, when you come in at last minute, the papers might be flying, so excuse me. So CEO of WWF China, she joined WWF China in 2012 and has successfully served as Director of Climate and Energy Practice. So we have a right person to give us the opening remarks, and she is also served as Chief Operating Officer. Her leadership areas Winnie is a graduate from the Peking University and has a master's degree in business management from Strathclyde Graduate Business School. So I would like to welcome you now to give us your opening remarks.
Thank you, moderator. Distinguished speaker, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to be able to speak in this side event. As moderator just introduced, I started my journey with WWF as a climate director in China, and I have full passion about climate energy as well as Africa. Actually, I just came back from Africa last week. Good afternoon. Today I stand to discuss the transformative potential of environmental protection and economic developments, particularly in sustainable energy practices within Africa. At this critical juncture, China's role transcends opportunity, which embodies a deep responsibility and a strategic choice. China's journey towards the largest renewable energy deployment country could provide Africa with expertise and experiences towards a greener energy and a more sustainable economic in the future. This effort aligns with China's commitment in both climate change and South-South collaboration at the global scale. China's approach should be multifaceted. It involves channeling investments into renewable energy projects, shaping policies that foster environmental conducive to sustainable investments. Yeah. This means crafting and implementing regulations and incentives that resonate with the unique economic landscape of African countries. Capacity building is also crucial in this process. China needs to enhance public financial management and public investment management related to climate projects. This will enable policymakers to implement necessary reform effectively. Countries need the capacity to identify, evaluate, and select high-quality projects, while also managing related fiscal risks. This includes addressing the current lack of high-quality, reliable data, harmonize the climate information disclosure standards, and the classification methods that ensure investments align with climate goals. Strengthening climate information frameworks will aid in developing and deepening capital markets, facilitating better financing for relevant projects. Innovative financing is another domain where China can lead by example. By cultivating new climate finance markets, setting relevant guidelines, and providing training, we can help create a fertile ground for sustainable investment in Africa. Promoting climate finance requires strategic measures from China. We need to focus on policies that redirect investments from high carbon to climate-friendly projects. This involves smarter regulations, pricing signals, and favor low-carbon investments tailored to each country's unique financial and macro context. Conversely, Africa's role in attracting Chinese investments in renewable energy is pivotal. African nations should strive to create a stable, transparent regulatory environment to attract foreign investors. This includes clear renewable energy policies, incentives for sustainable projects, and investment protection. Investing in local workforce and infrastructure will further enhance Africa's appeal as a destination for renewable energy investment. The efforts mark a strategic shift in China's South-South cooperation. It also helps us towards a sustainable global future. China's engagement in Africa transcends partnerships. It is a model for international collaboration, pushing forward a more sustainable and resilient world. In conclusion, the synergy between China's climate financial investments, and Africa's efforts to foster an investment-friendly environment is crucial. This collaboration is not merely a path to sustainable development. It represents a strategic partnership promising mutual benefits and a brighter, cleaner future for both regions. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Ms. Winnie. And I think you highlighted quite a number of issues that I will not want to comment on your wonderful speech, but I think it raises the issues of South-South cooperation, but more importantly, on how do we build that enabling environment to attract renewable and Chinese renewable energy or Chinese investment into the renewable energy space. And I think that is a good way for us to usher in our keynote speaker for today, Right Honorable Nelly Butate Kashumba. Honorable, excuse me if I make a mistake. Our keynote speaker, whom you will hear in a moment, was elected as the first female speaker of the National Assembly of Zambia. I think that is a big stride that Africa is showing, that we're having females getting into those big roles, and I think that deserves a hand of applause, please. And she's fondly referred to as a people's speaker, and I think that's why she's here today, to tell us what she's doing for her people. She has championed various parliamentary reforms and advocating for more women representation in the House, but also matters of climate change. In March 2023, Speaker Muti launched the planting of at least 1,000 trees in all the 156 constituencies in Zambia, arising from the 144th Interparliamentary Union resolutions on combating climate change. Ms. Muti is also a 2023 Commonwealth Parliamentarian of the Year. Congratulations, Ma. Representing over 160 parliaments and legislatures in the Commonwealth. She sits on the Interparliamentary Union Executive Committee. She's the Executive Committee of the Conference of Speakers and presiding officers of the Commonwealth. So welcome, Madam, and thanks. So I think we are very privileged to have you and for you to share with us your keynote for this day. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Let me recognize the presence of members of parliament from Zambia who are here with us today, our partners from the Worldwide for Nature, WWF, other partners present, our panelists, moderator. May I simply say, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm a moderator. When I was elected the Speaker of the National Assembly of Zambia, it amused me that the position actually doesn't make me speak as quite often, despite having the title Speaker. I don't take speaking for granted. From the onset, let me place on record my appreciation to WWF for extending an invitation to me and by extension to the members of parliament from Zambia, who are also members of the Parliamentary Caucus on Climate Change and Environment. I must admit that this is my first time attending COP, but surely not my last. I want to assure my delegation that this meeting is an eye-opener in strengthening the oversight responsibilities of Parliament on these matters. I am delighted this afternoon to join you on this very important panel discussion where we'll be looking at bringing the finance gap for transformative gender climate solutions in Africa. I wish to indicate that the subject at hand is very close to my heart as a woman. Firstly, not only have I experienced the negative impacts of climate change in Zambia, but also directly how it impacts our people. Secondly, being Speaker, I have been exposed to debates on many challenges affecting our people. And the debate on the need to bridge the gender gap in all spheres of life has tended to cut across all debates in the House. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change is not gender neutral. Women are often disproportionately affected by climate change impacts. According to the 2022 report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has haphazard increase existing gender inequalities and thereby contribute to the greater climate change vulnerability of many women. This is already due to persisting gender norms and widespread gender discrimination that deny women income, legal rights, and access to resource or political participation, while assigning them to primary role of caring for their families and providing for their livelihoods. Although these factors lead to women's marginalization and tend to widen the financial gap between men and women, yet as farmers, entrepreneurs, producers, consumers, and household managers, women are regarded as powerful stakeholders in implementing effective climate change mitigation and adaptation strategies. Ladies and gentlemen, despite steady progress towards greater gender sensitivity in the current climate finance regime, many existing mitigation and adaptation financing schemes have yet to deliver on women's empowerment by systematically and effectively linking gender and climate finance. Mitigation activities and associated financing have tended to focus more on large-scale energy efficiency and or renewable energy projects in which women are usually left out. Gender-responsive climate budgets are needed to ensure that government policies do not create, maintain, or exacerbate gender inequalities, but rather work to meet all people's unique intersectional and evolving needs. International experience from developing programs has shown that increasing the gender responsiveness of public climate change funding is an opportunity to improve the effectiveness and efficiency as well as the sustainability of investments. This is relevant for both climate adaptation and mitigation financing. Yet, despite steady progress towards promoting great gender sensitivity in all sectors of the economy, the gender climate finance gap still remains wide. I would like to state that bringing the gender gap in climate financing will require the involvement of all actors and stakeholders, including parliaments. I strongly believe that through its legislative oversight, budgetary approval, and representative functions, parliaments can play a key role in ensuring that gender-sensitive climate objectives are systematically integrated into government policy, planning, budgeting, monitoring, evaluation, and audits. Further, parliaments can transpose international agreements on climate change financing into national legislation and ensure that they are effectively enforced and implemented through adequate budgets and robust oversight. Parliaments can also serve as a bridge between constituents, governments, and the international community. The ex ante and ex post oversight roles of Parliament is particularly critical to bridging the financial gap in climate change financing. Parliaments can play this role by tracking government's budgetary expenditure in line with the commitments made in the budget proposals in promoting accountability and good governance. From a gender perspective, tracking budget expenditure is essential because it captures whether resources allocated to promote gender equality are actually being used for that purpose. In addition, parliamentary tracking of budget expenditure helps to capture information for programs and services that may not have an explicit gender focus, but have indirect gender impacts. This is in line with the public finance management standards, which require that expenditure should be tracked against the budget allocations, with gender equality tracking focused on programs and services classified by the government as relating and targeted to gender outcomes. Before I conclude, I would like to state that in our quest to bridge the gender gap in climate financing, our aim was of a strong view that we must also deal with the issue of women's representation and participation in political leadership and other decision-making processes. Available research indicates a strong positive correlation between the percentage of seats occupied by women in national parliaments and the prioritization of gender-sensitive climate change policy. This is where the role and institution of parliament becomes critical. At this juncture, allow me to share with you a few things which the Zambian parliament is doing to advance the welfare of women. As I do so, I would like to mention that my election as the first female speaker of the National Assembly of Zambia has provided impetus and strong support to the fight for more women in positions of influence. In addition, you may wish to note that I am the first female speaker in the history of the Zambian parliament to attend COP conference. This demonstrates the great importance that I and the entire institution of parliament have attached to the issues of climate change. As part of the efforts to promote more women representation and participation in parliament, we have established the Zambia Women Parliamentary Caucus. Further, we have the Committee on National Guidance and Gender Matters, which scrutinizes government policies and programs on gender-related matters. In addition, about 3 weeks ago, I launched the revised Public Finance Handbook, which is an important tool for use by members of parliament in scrutinizing the budget. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the questions that I keep confronting myself with is what do we do as parliament to address some of the challenges we are facing on matters of gender and climate change? Well, I'm glad to inform you that our parliament is finalizing modalities through our standing orders of transforming our 2 parliamentary caucuses into standalone portfolio committees of parliament, namely the Zambia Women Parliamentary Caucus and the Zambia Parliamentary Caucus on Environment and Climate Change. We believe this will ensure the work of these 2 important caucuses is well funded under the institutional budget to enable them carry out their work effectively. I believe this will go a long way in entrenching and promoting gender responsive of public climate change funding and contribute to bringing the gender gap in climate budget and financing. Let me end by quoting the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Dr. Kofi Annan, when he reflected as follows, and I quote, "No tool of development is as effective as the empowerment of women," end of quote. I am optimistic that part of our takeaway from this discussion will be collectively providing practical solutions in scaling up initiatives on sustainable gender climate financing. And I'm glad that we have some banking officials from Zambian banks who will be able to give us some ideas on how best women can benefit from this finance by tackling this climate change. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. God bless.
Thanks so much. All right, Honorable Speaker. I think it's difficult to provide any reaction to that, but I think a lot of things you said, and I think that was in response to the opening remarks made by the CEO of WF China, the enabling environment, the oversight, and I think that is what you said in your keynote speak. So I think at this point, I would like now to invite a very interesting panel that will help us unpack some of these issues when it comes to gender and finance. And I'll start by welcoming Ms. Lida, and sorry if I, Lida Fitz, who she is Director of Sustainable Infrastructure Office at the U.S. Department of Treasury. Lida is she's responsible for supporting the mobilization of private investment into sustainable infrastructure in developing markets globally in support of the Partnership for Global Infrastructure Investment, PGI, and through development of bilateral and multilateral tools. She leads the technical implementation of just energy transition partnerships, and I think some of those things we'll see how they come in. She represents the U.S. in the G20 Infrastructure Working Group. And she has over 25 years of experience in trade and infrastructure development. She led infrastructure project preparation and investment strategy for the U.S. Trade and Development Agency, where she has served as regional director for Sub-Saharan Africa and developed and directed the agency's largest portfolio of infrastructure project preparations. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us today. Our next speaker is Bayani Zulu. He's from FMB Zambia. You know, I've been talking to women the whole day, and I will shut up very soon, and I'll call our moderator, Ms. Rose, who will be joining us to take over. Bayani Zulu, he's the Chief Risk Officer from FMB, that's First National Bank Zambia. He's a chartered accountant with over 16 years experience in capital markets, banking and financial service industry. He's a fellow of the ACCA and ZICA, I think that is a Zambia Institute for Chartered Accountants, and a holder of a bachelor's degree in accounting from Copperbelt University. Bayani started his career in audit and accounting. His banking career includes different positions: operational risk manager, corporate and investment banking, and audit. Thanks, sir, for joining us. And our last panelist for this day is Mr. Ignatius Kashoka. He also is from FMB. He's a Zambian. He's a holder of a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering of the prestigious Bank Treasury Risk Management Certificate and ACI Treasury Dealing Certificate, Paris. Ignatius has total banking experience of over 23 years, of which 20 of this experience have been in treasury and corporate banking at management level in Zambia, Netherlands, Kenya, Tanzania, and London. He has trading and executive management experience at Rabobank London and Utrecht in the Netherlands. His expertise covers trading assets and liabilities management. Thank you, sir, for joining us today. And at this point, I would like to welcome Ms. Rose for the next section of this site event. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Apologies for the delay in joining the session. We had a runover session with the Republican president, which we had to attend to quickly, but I'm so glad to join you and to be with the distinguished panel. The Right Honorable Speaker, I acknowledge you, acknowledge all the parliamentary caucus team that has accompanied her, and all protocols observed. So my name is Rose Sibisi. I am the chairperson for the MTN Zambia Foundation and communications lead for Women Leaders for Climate Action. So WLCA is a network of influential women in different fields who merge to have one voice on the need for urgent, sustainable climate action. It was founded in September 2021 by women CEOs from leading businesses, NGOs, and cooperating partners. So for us, this session is very key because it speaks about enhancing women's resilience to climate change by eliminating gender gaps in access to finance in Zambia. From the Right Honorable Speaker's remarks, we are really aligned in ensuring that we have a leading voice in driving climate action that has gender inclusion and promotes transformative change. So this afternoon, we are looking forward to a discussion that will look at current and emerging trends in climate financing, the key challenges that investors are facing when it comes to gender and climate investment. We want to see how green finance products for women and youth-led development enterprises can be a key consideration for achieving sustainable development goals. And we also want to know how the banks are mitigating climate risk exposure. What is the overexposure to climate change? And this wonderful and distinguished panel is going to help us answer some of those questions. Going straight into it, I will start with Ignatius. We are just wondering, what are the current and emerging trends in climate financing in relation to gender at a global level?
Thank you for that, Rose. Thank you. Thank you for that, Rose. So maybe let me just add context to what was spoken about earlier. If you look at the way it works at present, you'll find that women are generally disproportionately excluded from even access to financing and funding. And that's why I'm happy to note that things are changing in the right direction. So for instance, you've got the Climate Gender Equity Fund, which focuses primarily on empowering women because they have less chance of getting access to funding. This was launched by the USAID and Amazon. We've also got your clean impact bonds, which are also now launched. That's the necessary level of funding we need. And in addition to that, we've got sustainable financing that's available. This focuses mainly on loans and some bonds. But one of the key performance indicators is gender equity in there, so that's very important. And then bringing it home to FNB Zambia, we launched what you call Her Banking. That's helping every woman rise. So in terms of what we do from an FNB perspective, you'll find that as a treasurer, I offer preferential pricing, extended tenors. In short, we basically look at patient finance, because that's very important for women, and especially the fact that for a very long time we've not paid much attention to that. That's pretty much what we do from our perspective.
Speaking of empowering women, let me empower myself and sit here so that I can listen very nicely to the panelists. My excuse for my feet being tired. Thank you, Ignatius. And also from the FNB side, maybe Bayani, you can help us show some key challenges that investors are facing when it comes to gender and climate investment portfolios. We really just want to know what can be done when it comes to mitigating these challenges by the potential fund recipients.
Okay, so when we talk about the key challenges that potential investors face, I will run through just 4 of them, given that there are quite many. But what I should quickly state here is that these are compounded and become significantly serious or critical when you assess them, when you look at women and how women are impacted by them. The first one, of course, is the cost of funding. I'm glad Ignatius spoke about what we're trying to do around that. But when we look at the economic landscape, particularly for developing countries, a lot of countries are quite heavily indebted, and that's impacted their country ratings, subsequently resulting in expensive funding. And most of this funding comes from foreign entities, and it comes in what we refer to as hard currency. So it comes at a very, very expensive cost. So when you look at already, if we heard from Honorable Miti, she did indicate that women and access to financing is quite, it's really a big issue for us. So if that comes with a huge cost to access that funding, it excludes women completely. Another key challenge that we investors face is around the differences in regulatory landscape. So when you look at where a lot of the funding is coming from, I'll give an example of Europe. The iterations around climate finance, sustainability finance, that regulatory landscape has evolved over the years. But when you come to developing countries such as Zambia, we are barely getting started. So what that does to potential funders is there's a complete or a very huge disparity between the expectations around reporting and also expectations around how to demonstrate impact from those regulatory requirements. When you come into our environment, we are nowhere near meeting some of those requirements. So it becomes very onerous on potential funders to really find attractive investment and bankable projects in Africa. A third problem, which I think has also been touched on by Winnie Lu, is around data. And this data will talk to how we utilize available data to come up with appropriate metrics that can make sense to the funders. The fact that we don't have infrastructure to track this data around climate change, climate risk, disaster, calamities, you name them, becomes very difficult to utilize what's there to enhance appropriate solutions. Lastly, one key challenge is around qualified staff to structure some of these deals. And that, for me, offers an opportunity where financial institutions can partner with local banks who understand the local landscape, like FNB, and ensure that we come up with a program to upskill related or available resources to ensure that funding is made available in Africa. You did also ask about what potential funders can do. I'll just quickly touch on two. One of the key actions would be partnering with developed countries or institutions that are way ahead in bedding down sustainability frameworks. If you heard Winnie Lu, she did speak about China being quite ahead. If we partner with countries like China to quickly speed up bedding down these frameworks, that could go a long way. Another key possible opportunity is what we are doing. This partnership with WWF helps to bring together opportunities for potential funders to interact with local banks such as FNB and identify opportunities that can advance this cause forward.
Wonderful. Very well articulated. Thank you so much for that, Bayani. Coming to you, Lida, with the background that the two gentlemen have given from the financial institutions' perspective, why should green finance products for women and youth-led enterprises be a key consideration for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2030, just as we've gathered for COP28?
So I think it was well stated by the Honorable Speaker that climate change is not gender neutral. And we are tackling and working to have a massive reorientation of our economies. And we cannot reach a green transition if we are not involving 50% of the world's population and 100% of the world's future leaders and entrepreneurs in that conversation. And so I'd say that we look at both prioritizations and solutions. I do think that the MDBs are well placed, multilateral development banks are well placed to be part of that solution in their provision of stable, long-term financing to financial institutions, including national banks, and their programming to work with governments to help prioritize some of the regulatory and structural changes that need to happen to include women in financial tools, as well as that straight access. From the U.S. perspective, gender is a key part of development of all investments in a country. And in fact, our approach to infrastructure, the Partnership for Global Infrastructure Investment that the moderator mentioned, gender is one of the 4 focus areas, so that any investment, be it rail, be it power, you're looking at the gender impacts, not just the hiring of jobs created. But for instance, the Lobito Corridor, which is one of the key investments of PGI, is focused on rail and highway development from Angola through to Zambia. And we just announced a $5 million grant that looks at women's farming activities around that corridor to make sure that as trade is developed, the farmers, the women-run farms that are near that corridor are well placed to take advantage of the trade opportunities that are being created. And we're also looking at providing skills training that's technical in nature, so that as those jobs come in manufacturing and elsewhere enabled by that corridor, women are well placed to take them too. So I think that thinking ahead of investments that we may not think of as being gendered, it's important to make sure that we're making investments to include women in the benefits and growth. Over.
Brilliant. So just for the management of our session, I will come back to each one of you with one question each before we take in a few questions, 1, 2, 3 questions from the audience, and then we'll come to a close where I ask you for your 1-minute closing and wrap-up questions. But interestingly, with what LIDA has attributed to in terms of how they're targeting women in farming, agriculture, Ignatius, do you see that there are any sustainable or gender-specific financial products which the banks are offering to grow the green economy in Africa? I know you talked about HER, but FNB has a footprint across Africa. Any specific initiatives?
So the funny thing is, her banking was actually launched by FNB Zambia. So I'm guessing across our subsidiaries in Africa, we should have something coming up similar.
Okay.
But more specifically, if you look at the impact on women for climate change, maybe I'll take it a bit, I'll take it home. If you look at women in general, in our rural areas, they're the ones who could fetch water.
Yeah.
So if there's a drought, they'll have to travel further. They'll have less time to spend with their families. And if they actually do some economic activities, they have less time for that as well. So it's actually very important for us. It's something that's of a key focus for us. And taking it back to our parent company, First Rand, we believe in creating a better world for everyone, and with women as a focus as well.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And from your side, Bayani, having said that, you're going to the grassroots and you're reaching the everyday women and their needs with women leading households, and they're the income earners. How would you say the banks are mitigating climate risk exposure, what is this overall exposure to climate change? I would imagine Zambia is one of the countries most affected by deforestation, and as you know, most women are burning charcoal to feed families and livelihoods. How do the banks mitigate this climate risk exposure?
Okay, thank you. So when you look at the way banks are responding, quite right, I will use what we're doing as FNB to basically benchmark what other financial institutions within Zambia can do. As Ignatius has rightly pointed out, FNB's mission is to create a better world. And we are responding to these climate challenges by 2 key approaches. One is internally focused. The internally focused one is where we are taking part in initiatives such as the tree planting initiatives. We kickstarted this project about 2 years ago, and I'm sure a lot of institutions are taking part in that. I was happy to hear that even Parliament is participating in that. It is going a long way in addressing the deforestation that we've endured over the years. Another key internal initiative is around capacity building and creating awareness around the innovative tools that are available to deal with climate change. We're doing this by engaging customers, particularly those that are vulnerable, and giving them appropriate information and mechanisms that they can deploy, and funding that they can access from ourselves, such as green loans or solar targeted solutions. When we go external, externally, there is several products and partnerships that we've engaged into. One of the partnerships is, I'll keep referring back to the one with WWF and the partnership with yourselves, Rose. Those are helping to really bring everyone on board and not make this issue as though it's an F&B issue, but it's a global issue. So if we work together, then we're essentially creating synergies to identify solutions that are workable and bankable within our regions, and that talk and resonate to the challenges that we are facing. When you come to the exposure, without really getting into figures, but all banks in one way or another are exposed to physical risks related to climate change and climate-related calamities. I know very well that we all depend, Zambia depends on mining. A lot of the methods that are currently being used in mining are very fossil intensive, and that's a real challenge that we face, presenting an opportunity for innovation. Moving away from there, we did hear about agriculture. It's another key sector that we intend to diversify in as Zambia, but when you look at the methods that are being used for agriculture and generation of more productivity, they are all still quite fossil intensive and presents an opportunity for us to innovate.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Beani. I mean, we're very, very excited to hear that, because for the very fact that Women Leaders for Climate Action was created was to look at opportunities that would bridge those gaps. As I introduced what WLCA is all about, it was founded by leading CEOs across Zambia. And as you know, they're heads of financial institution, our biggest agricultural and beef manufacturing companies, Ambeef. So all those are founder members of Women Leaders for Climate Action, because the goal is to look at how we can actually bridge this gap for transformative gender inclusion. And Lida, that's where we need your thoughts in terms of what the biggest challenges are in sustainable finance, especially where women are concerned. I know you've drilled down to the ordinary women, but what are the biggest challenges in sustaining that finance and the opportunities that these women can get?
Well, simply put, there's a dearth of financial institution support for gender and climate-aligned efforts. And financial institutions are resistant to things that are new or untested or that they perceive are new. And that's the same whether we're discussing green or inclusive investments. But what we're seeing now is that investors are demanding those. And they can no longer accept when institutions tell them that inclusive or green options are not available. So in responding to that demand is really what's prompting, I think, a lot of take-up, and certainly the work of institutions like WWF. And I have to say, I was particularly impressed with the number of efforts that FNB Zambia is making to bring these tools on. That's very much a focus of the U.S. We have a founding member of a multilateral effort, Women Entrepreneurs Finance Initiative, or WEFI, which is a financial intermediary fund sitting at MDBs that targets women-owned or led small and medium enterprises. And it really focuses on providing grants for technical assistance and capacity building support directly to financial institutions so that they can, well, for that matter, and governments and regulators, to really try and crack open the promise of women economic empowerment, which necessitates financing. And that focus on access to finance is key in looking at both the legal and the regulatory environment. There are issues within those that are, unknowingly often disenfranchising women. And at COP28, WEFI will be announcing a new climate-aligned call to build on the existing partnerships with FIs to directly address this gap on climate-aligned women SMEs. The WeFi already has 251 existing financial institution partnerships, but we need to expand that if we're going to reach the scale of the issue. The model, I think, has already proven successful in that every dollar of WeFi financing has unlocked $10 in financing to women from financial institutions. And over the last 5 years, WeFi has had a meaningful impact in touching over 50,000 women SMEs, leveraging $1.2 billion in funds, and impacting, and I think for me as a policymaker, this is the hardest part, 57 legal and regulatory reforms. So I think that looking at those results, that is an effort that we believe in and will continue to invest in.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And for putting numbers to it, because then definitely numbers don't lie. We're doing great with time. We have 5 minutes we can allocate to the audience to ask 1 or 2 questions. We can take 2 quick questions or 3. What we will do with the limited time, if we can't respond to the questions in the 5 minutes, we'll definitely take the details and pass them on to the panelists. Sir, you had your hand up first. I'll take your question first.
I say those COPs is always an opportunity to learn. And listening to the president of WWF, one of the sessions, he actually opened our mind particularly that when one of the source of bridging the finance gap actually when something happened due to climate change. If you are in the family where, let's say, the flood has made that the head of the family has lost actually the crops and cannot sell them to pay for the school fees or pay for what's happened. They are not going to wait for the GF or the GF money or the World Bank money. It is generally in the couple, in the household, is the saving from the woman. And those savings are what? The jewelries or those handmade fabrics that they will, I'm talking about my culture back in Burkina Faso, where they will use those fabric when she passes away, they put it next to her corpse to show the wealth of the family. And this is what they are going to take and sell so that the child will go to school and so on. So, actually, they are the major source of income and funding of those gaps. Yeah. So when I look at the composition of the panel, I was happy to see that there's a chief risk officer in the panel, meaning that, yes, the women are really high-risk people and so on. And you named them, you gave the example. So my question to you, since you joined, and thanks to the partnership with an institution like WWF, what is the trend? If we ask you today, from your start and now, what is the growth of income or, let's say, funding that you have agreed and signed off for ladies, for women at your bank there?
Okay, my name is Felix Kunda, and I'm coming from Zambia. I've listened to your 2 presentations. You're doing quite a good job. But my question is, do you have a policy in place that targets women so that with a policy, you will have a system in place? Because sometimes you have a chief executive officer who has a passion for women. Because of that, women will be able to get loans, women will be able to be supported. But once that chief executive officer is gone, then everything grounds to zero. So my question is, do you have a specific policy that supports women to get loans from your bank?
As you get that one, Bayani, you can also wrap it up as your 1 minute close down if you respond to the questions. We are running out of time.
Okay, I'll be quick with.
Thank you.
Should we take one last question?
Yeah, I
One last
raised my hand.
Sure. Just be very specific to the question, please.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I'm
you.
very passionate about this topic.
Sure.
I'm a member of parliament from Zambia.
Fantastic.
And in my constituents, the largest population are women. So I'm listening to the two gentlemen here coming from my country, and I'm proud of the work they are doing. But I want to be a bit more practical. I want to ask the question in form of an example. My government, the government of Zambia, has introduced a fund which supports women, which is a CDF fund. And in my constituents last year, I gave about 2.8 million. Out of 2.8 million, about 52 members of those beneficiaries were women, but the largest number again were men. But one thing which shocked me was, as soon as they were given these loans, they didn't have direction in terms of how they would use this money. They were completely lost. So I discovered that I think there's something we're also not doing that we need to do. And when I hear about the clean impact bonds that you've mentioned, how can you connect the bonds to already existing systems like the CDF, and also see to it that the most common woman, I don't want to talk about the women in the urban setup, I want to talk about the women from like my constituents. How can they also participate in this kind of bonds? Because for me, they might sound to be more urbanized conversations. When you tell a woman from my constituents about the impact bond, I think it will be something very far-fetched from her mind. She can never step her foot in a bank. So I'm just trying to think, how can we bring this conversation to the lowest woman and also connect what the banks are doing to the existing monies that government is giving? I just need that response. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable MP. Bayani?
Okay, so I will combine all the three questions in my response. Firstly, to start off with the question from Burkina Faso. Ignatius did highlight that we've got a specific product that targets women, hair banking, helping every woman rise. It gives preferential loans, preferential pricing for maintaining a bank account. That sorts out the aspects of women. In terms of how much we've given out specifically to women, I'll ask Ignatius to share the figures there. Then when it comes to whether we've got a policy around that just targets women, I can confidently tell you that our executive team is 50% women. Our staff complement at FNB is 62% women. That just shows you the focus and the value that we attach to women. Our head of retail, where the product, her banking sits, is a woman. So you can imagine the kind of conversations and the passion that's associated with anything to do with women. Getting to the aspect that you touched on, I did speak about it, that one of the things we're doing very aggressively is capacity building. Part of the initiatives partnering with Rose and team is targeted financial literacy, education focused on women. That, once done properly, will enable women to be well equipped when they receive that CDF and also the loans that we offer. Lastly, one of the key products that we recently introduced targeted at women is offering solar stoves and solar solutions specifically for households. And we all know who runs the household. I'll end there.
Thank you, Bayani. In a 1 minute wrap up, Ignatius, do you have numbers for us in response to?
I can share with you in person.
Okay.
Yeah, in general, yes, there is a focus. And maybe just to add to what Bayani spoke about, statistically, what we've seen is that women perform a lot better than men when they get loans. And to his point, they do manage the home.
So then we need to connect with the Honorable MP here, where we have women who don't know what to do, and then we link up the financial literacy training and also capacity building and just get them sensitized in how they can use those funds.
Yes, and maybe just to add to what Bayani spoke about, apart from just giving them preferential pricing and things like that, we actually help them to network with other women. and businesses. That also helps. We call it non-financial help. Yeah.
Thank you, Ignatius. Vida, in closing, saving the best for last, the women will give us our closing remarks.
Look, it has really been an honor to be on this panel and to hear the details of what's happening. And I was going to say, I also really appreciate the questions, because I think that often this conversation begins with how can women access financing, when really it's got to be turned on its head. How can financiers find and access women? How can the banks make sure that they can have the entire country as clientele versus half? And as you already indicated, women businesses are well run, tend to be more profitable. In fact, in the US, we look at businesses that have women CEOs have higher profits on average. So it's not a risky investment, and it is, there are profits to be made from the banking side. So recognizing that there's self-interest from the financial institutions in getting to women and making sure that that priority is taken and not putting that issue on women, I think, is a perspective that I was so pleased to hear from the entire room.
Thank you very, very much. And I think our time here is well spent. We didn't do too badly, but at this point, I'd just like to express our sincerest gratitude to FNB for facilitating this panel discussion in partnership with WWF for always allowing us a space for women to air their voices around climate action. Would like to thank WWF China CEO, Ms. Winnie Lu. Thank you so much for participating and for your contributions. Our Honorable Nelly Muti, Speaker of the National Assembly of Zambia, thank you so much. This is a side that we don't normally talk about in terms of how the real women are being supported through parliamentary action. So thank you so much for participating in the session this afternoon. The conversations do continue. It has been an honor to have you join us this afternoon. Please feel free to continue following WWF pages, FNB, Women Leaders for Climate Action, and I throw in MTN Zambia Foundation, and look at all our climate action initiatives. This is Rose CBC, and I'm honored to have moderated this panel this afternoon.
Coming to this summit as an organization, we had a number of expectations, strengthening the NDC ambition to climate finance. I was glad to see how the head of state governments were able to start looking at issues that matter, which was climate finance, to help build our position as a continent going to COP28.
I think this COP is important because it needs to restore faith and credibility in the multilateral processes for addressing global problems. We need very strong political will and commitment to accelerate energy transition to ensure that we get affordable energy access for Africans who are today excluded from access to the sustainable sources of energy.
In this summit, the new narrative we're hearing that's coming out is that we have the solutions. Because we have a quarter of the world's biodiversity. We have the critical minerals that are needed for renewable energy. Going into COP28, we're going to take the same messages.
Africa is not using up to 2% of its renewable energy potential. And I think that is a potential we need to capitalize on. We need to optimize that so that we can start providing energy to all, phasing out fossil fuel, to operationalizing the loss and damage fund, but also using nature as a platform or as a pathway for adaptation and fighting climate change.
Our potential is going to define the future of global opportunity that respects the environment and supports our planet's capacity to sustain biodiversity.
This COP really must be a beacon of credibility. It's time for action. It's not time for more talk. All parties must come to the table and prioritize action because it's urgent and time is running out.